Benny Neil podcast. This is Benny.
This is Neil.
How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing wonderfully, wonderfully. A bit tired today, but
Sound a little bit tired.
glad to be here. Glad to be here.
What are we talking about tonight?
So tonight, what we are going to delve into is the recent, tension between Korea and Japan. This is August 2019. Recent summer tensions, things heating up.
Yeah, I had a student speak to me earlier tonight. She also said the same thing. She said things are heating up. They've been hot right now. It's boiling right now.
It's boiling. Tensions are boiling, and the temperature is boiling. It's quite hot here.
Maybe that's why everyone's just upset because it's just so dang hot. So they're
Yeah,
just
it's about 35, 36 with humidity.
All right.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, first, a brief history, just for anyone listening that's not sure, whatever. So, very brief ancient history. Korea is a peninsula located in Asia. It's connected to the mainland of China, the peninsula is, and it's right next to Japan. Japan is an island, of course. In ancient history, a lot of cultural, philosophical, and trade exchanges happened between China and Japan, and that happened through Korea. All three countries have times where they were butt buddies. They've had times when they were at war with each other. So that's a brief ancient history rundown. But more importantly, 20th and 21st century, in 1910, Japan annexed Korea, and Korea remained Japan's colony until Japan surrendered in World War II on August 15th, 1945. So actually in about a week is the Independence Day. Then the Korean War, which was fought between North and South Korea, the U.S. backing South Korea, China and Russia, or the Soviet Union backing North Korea. That occurred between the years of 1950 and 1953. The U.S. used Japan as a military hub to fight that war. 1953, Korea split into two, North and South Korea. Moving on to 1965, this is when official diplomatic relations began between South Korea and Japan. At that time, dictator Park Chung-hee was in power, and it's kind of like an apology or accepting Japan's apology. They accepted nearly $1 billion in economic aid. Korea was insanely poor, like as poor as like one of the poorest African countries. And during its time of development, Japan gave a lot of money to help develop it. Things were good for about 35 years, and then in the early 2000s, the Japanese and South Korean relationship soured a little bit when the Prime Minister of Japan at that time, Minister Junichiro Koizumi, visited the.
I've seen that guy. I saw that
Have
guy.
you?
Yeah, I saw that. I was at Tokyo Station one day waiting for a Shinkansen, and when the door opened, he just like walks out, and he was with like one dude. Like he had no, I don't know if that guy was his bodyguard or what, but it was like he just walked out like some random person. I was with that.
How did you know that was him?
He has a very distinct look. If you see his face, and he has a distinct hair as well. Yeah, so I knew.
You have a weird facial recognition ability, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, moving
Why
on.
don't he visited the
Yes.
Yasukuni Shrine every year during his term? Why don't you let the listeners know what the heck
Yeah,
that is?
so the Yasukuni Shrine, it's a shrine that is dedicated to Japanese soldiers who died in the war. So it's just, I think it upsets some people because of some of the atrocities that Japan committed during the war over in China. I'm not sure if it was Manchuria, like the northern Chinese area. There was a name for it. I'm not sure what they called it.
Is it Nanjing?
Something like that. But they did a lot of things, the rape of Nanking and
Nanking, I think.
comfort women and all that. I'm sure we'll get into some of that. But so when leaders visit, it's seen as kind of like I don't know. For me, it's not really a big. I don't see why it's a big deal. You know what I mean? They're Japanese. Why shouldn't they also honor their dead the same way we do in America, or the same way any country does, right? So, but it's just, I know what I do know from the little bit I know. It's an enshrinement for the killed in action and the soldiers that have died in Japan. So it bothers Koreans sometimes.
Well, one thing I didn't know when I found out about this researching, I had nothing. I didn't know about the shrine at all. I just knew that people were pissed if prime ministers went to visit there. I had thought that it was just, I don't know, it was like the headquarters for the Imperial Army, but apparently like these are not just war criminals. It contains about 1,000 war criminals in that shrine, but there's also about 2.5 million men, women, and children who have their names there as well, and it also includes like pets and stuff. So this is not. It seems like it's not just a shrine for war criminals that makes up a very small percentage of the people die, but it's mostly regular warriors and civilians even.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I know. I'm sure. I mean, well, you know what it is. That's what it is. But I'm not sure. I mean, why you living in Korea probably have a better idea of what some everyday Koreans are saying about the relations between China and Japan. Because in my experience, most Japanese people I speak with don't really talk about the Korean relations. I only knew one guy. He ran a gym that I used to go to, and sometimes he would complain about Moon. He didn't really complain about Koreans, but he really doesn't like Moon. He thinks that Moon is secretly friends and butt buddies with Kim Jong Un, and that he's plotting right in the back. But that's the only guy I've really heard about here in Japan. We don't see. I mean, lately with, and we'll talk about this, with tensions rising and ratcheting up. There's been some news on Japanese apps and stuff like that about some of the protests that are going on in Korea, but nothing really here that I've seen.
Okay, let's talk about, so that's one thing, the shrine thing. There's also what we refer to in English as the Liancourt Rocks, which is a tiny group of rocks, not even quite, I guess it's an island, not quite an island, or like isles or whatever. It's right in the middle between Korea and Japan. South Korea is currently in control of these islands, and South Korea calls them Dokdo, or calls it Dokdo, and has sovereignty over them, but that area is contested by Japan, who calls it Takashima. Um, you were, and I see this every day, but you said you were surprised when you visited Korea a month ago and you saw the propaganda related to this island, didn't you?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I went to Korea about a month ago just to visit some friends, and on the train, the shuttle. So it's very convenient. There's a shuttle from Incheon Airport into Seoul. But
What's the airport line? The
yeah,
subway.
yeah. So on that airport line, there was video propaganda about these islands that we're speaking about, Dokdo or Takashima or whatever. And I just thought it was crazy that like on the airport line, coming in, you're going to visit Korea, you're excited, and there's just like propaganda talk. And I forget the exact, what were some of the words? What did it say? It was pretty incredible though. Like,
History knows the truth.
yeah, like history knows the truth. Like Japan is wrong. I was like, what? It was pretty crazy. But yeah, and then recently, right? There's been on that ad. I sent you a picture. There's even being signs put up in Seoul, right? Like no Japan, or like boycott Japan and stuff like that.
We're getting a little out of ourselves. So
Yeah, I mean,
the islands, it goes as far. There's a wine. There's a Dokdok wine. Dokdo wine that's available. When I was an exchange student back in 2011, they actually sent exchange students, international students, for free to this island to take pictures with them, to like let the world know that, I guess it's an assumption that if someone from Germany or someone from wherever, Italy, went to the island, they took a picture, that's like official kind of recognition that this belongs to Korea. Anyway,
Yeah, I
do you
mean,
have any?
it's, I don't know. I'll have to. I've been paying more attention, to it as time has gone on, in recent days. But so far, I mean, it doesn't seem like on the ground here many Japanese people in Tokyo, at least. I bet in the rural areas they may be talking about it, or they may care about the islands, but nothing really here going on.
Well, yeah, this could also be one of the main complaints about Korea, blaming Japan for whitewashing history. Is like they don't. It could just be that Japanese people don't know about this stuff because they're not taught these things in history classes, which is one of the allegations.
That might be true, actually. I haven't seen history textbooks. I have some experience with the Japanese education system, but I haven't seen any history textbooks myself. But that wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. I know
So
they do talk about the nuclear attacks, though. Um, and just as an aside, so they do talk about that, and I don't think they absolve themselves. I think they just say like America bombed us. Maybe they don't. Maybe by omission they don't talk about what they did. But anyway, back to what we're talking.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
guess there's a poll in 2013 that reported. And again, I don't know. This is just information I found online. I don't know who is polled. I don't know how many people were polled. According to a poll in 2013, only 94% of Koreans believe Japan feels, quote, no regret for its past wrongdoings, while 63% of Japanese state that Korean demands for Japanese apologies are incomprehensible.
Yeah, I mean,
So, and this is kind of like what I've been told for many years living in Korea was that Japan never apologized. They said it didn't happen. It was, they just said, no, we don't even acknowledge it happened. Um, in 2012, though, stepping back 1 year, just to note that that is when President Park Geun-hye was elected, the first female president in Korea. And no, her name is just not a coincidence that it's the same Park as the guy I mentioned earlier, Park Chung-hee. That is actually his daughter. So the daughter of the dictator who ran Korea from the 60s to the 70s. His daughter became president in 2012. Um, and then in 2015, relations hit a high point when they finally addressed the issue of comfort women. So, what exactly is a comfort woman, you
uh,
might ask?
a comfort woman.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
a comfort
Mm.
woman is pretty much Japan came, when Korea was a colony and they were getting into World War II. They would take people as slaves. They'd take men and have them work in factories, which is one other issue that Korea's upset. We'll get to that in a little bit. So they were working in factories. Men were fighting in the Japanese military alongside the Japanese, and women were either taken for jobs such as sewing, but they were also taken as these comfort women, which were essentially sex slaves.
Yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of more your domain, living in Korea, but the comfort women, I would imagine, and again, this is important how we word this. I think that comfort women, yeah, I've heard about that. Korea's been upset about that for quite a while. Um, Japan has discussed it, um, but I wonder if that the horrific act of taking comfort women is any different than any other particular war where women were taken. And I mean, doesn't this happen? And again, this is not to minimize what happened at all. I mean, it's
Belittle.
horrible. It's horrible. But I mean, is there something special about the comfort women in particular? Um, that makes it different from any of these African nations, or maybe it's just because they're African nations that no one thinks about really, that this issue never
Look,
comes up. Or
look at Genghis Khan, Mongolia, which I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know how they went from dominating Asia to being a third world country now. Um, or maybe their second world, I'm not quite sure. Genghis Khan raped and pillaged so many villages. I mean, but I guess enough time has passed and no one really cares anymore, and this is still relatively. I mean, there are some comfort women, at least at the very least, there's one, maybe a few that are still alive. So maybe that's why it's a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, so I'm looking at a bit right now. Just reading a little bit about rape in war. It's terrible. It says, yeah, I mean, the NGOs, many NGOs have documented rape in war throughout history. So I'm just wondering. I mean, again, it's a horrible thing, but I'm just wondering why Korea. What is it specifically you think that causes Korea to continue to I mean, even though Japan has apologized for it, apparently.
okay, so here's the deal. Let's get into it. So they said they don't claim to apologize. In 2015, they struck a deal. Park Geun-hye struck a deal with our boy Abe, your boy Abe, and the foreign minister Fumio. You're gonna have to help me if I mess up this pronunciation. Fumio Kishida.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kishida, is that right? Kishida. It was the foreign minister pledged the Japanese government would donate about 1 billion yen, which is at that time $8.3 million, to help pay for the care of the surviving former sex slaves. Um, and apparently Abe made public apologies. Now there has been denial of this, that he made an apologies, and then when I went into this, I thought that there was no apology really made, so I was a little bit shocked when I found out the following news. Right before I read that, I'd like to say that some of the comfort women, even though the Korean government accepted the money, some of the comfort women refused to receive it because they didn't feel like the apology was adequate enough. They felt that it was vague, quote unquote vague. So it's a kind of a the conservatives here think they got the money. I have liberals here saying that they never accepted the money just disappeared. It definitely didn't go back to Japan. So either the government in Korea pocketed it or it went to someone.
Yeah, I mean, well, the quote, right? I
But
mean, the quote from Abe, he made apologies to, quote, women who underwent immeasurable and painful experiences and suffered insurable, is the right word, insurable, physical and psychological wounds as comfort women. So, I mean, is that what they were saying was ambiguous?
I I don't know by what means they felt it was ambiguous. Japan says that alleges that it was voluntarily. They voluntarily had sex with the Japanese soldiers, whereas Koreans are saying no, they
Yeah,
were
I
taken
mean,
away.
I mean, I probably would believe that they raped them. I mean, they were occupying the country, right?
And I mean, they're killing men
Yeah, I mean,
in the you're killing men. I don't think you wouldn't think, oh, we could kill these men over here, but we're not going to rape the women. Like,
it's horrible. And
just
again, we should say that because these, this, I can envision sound bites being taken out of context, and it's just, it's terrible. And again, but
but do let us know what you
yeah,
think
Benny
of
and
Benny and
Neil,
Neil.
hashtag Benny
Hashtag
and Neil,
or at Benny at
Twitter,
Benny and Neil at twitter.com.
twitter.com. But again, yeah, I mean, being serious here, we fuck around, but we're very serious. Like it was a terrible thing that they did. But the issue now is that I think maybe we should move on to the recent issue with the trade and how that we're
This is
building up,
we're
and
building
then
up
how
here.
it's all going to
We're
wrap back around. Alrighty, continuing on.
So I want to this is CNN December 29th, 2015. South Korea, Japan reach agreement on comfort women. That was what I was just talking about. They received the money. However, and this is quoting CNN article from December 29th, 2015. An advocacy group for former comfort women said the deal announced is a quote diplomatic humiliation. Although the Japanese government announced that it feels its responsibilities, the statement lacks the acknowledgement of the fact that the colonial government and its military had committed a systematic crime, said the Korean Council for Women drafted for military sexual slavery. The government had not just been simply involved, but actively initiating the activities which were criminal and illegal. It goes on to say that the apology that was given, they don't quote, they want to come from a woman, said that they don't want the money, they want a sincere apology, one that Willy Brandt gave at the Holocaust Memorial. That was called the NIFOL. Pretty much, this guy, Willy Brandt, he was the prime minister of Germany in the early 70s, I believe, and when he went to Poland to the Holocaust monument, he laid a wreath down on the floor, paused for a moment, decided that that wasn't good enough, and then he pretty much knelt down on his knees to give honors and respect. So that's kind of what they wanted. But so you would think, okay, well, maybe that's fair considering the crime was pretty bad. But what shocked me was that was December 29th, 2015. 4 months earlier, on August 13th, 2015, this is the Wall Street Journal, former Prime Minister Hatoyama kneels at wartime prison in Seoul.
Wow, he did it in Seoul as well.
He did it in front of the Sodaemun War Museum.
And people are still saying it's just never.
And this is great. And we're not quoting pro-Japanese newspapers. These are not far conservative Korean newspapers. These are U.S. papers. CNN, yeah, I know it's fake news. It's crap. It's 2015 though. Wall Street Journal, more reputable. And no one's denying the stuff that CNN said, but Wall Street Journal, August 13, 2015, amid widespread speculation over Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's statement commemorating the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, one of his predecessors was on his knees in Seoul expressing remorse over Japan's wartime acts.
That's pretty crazy. And so the thing is, in Japanese, that's called dogeza, right? And dogeza is it's pretty significant to the Japanese, right? So, for those who don't know, Japanese people are very, very proud people, right? And there's a lot of focus on respect and honor and things like that here. There's a difference, hierarchies with politeness and status and things like that. And it's a form of, it's a show of prostration, right? Which it's very uncommon for a person to literally, I mean, we see deep bows and things like that as a form of apology, which is already pretty significant. But I mean, getting on the ground in Japan is an extreme show of humble submission and respect. Even you can, and so let me read from Wikipedia, right? So, which also has a page on dogeza. That's how important it is here. It says, in the Japanese social consciousness, the act of sitting on the ground and creating a scene is an uncommon deference only used when one is deviating greatly from daily behavior. It is seen as a part of etiquette and filled with the feeling of being sorry about troubling the other person. So this is a huge, basically the strongest way that one can apologize for having done something, and to do so in Seoul, which I didn't know, is actually pretty incredible.
And continuing to quote the Wall Street Journal article here, it was Mr. Hatoyama's first visit to the museum, where Korean independence activists were held by the Imperial Japanese Army, according to the Public Relations Office of East Asian Community in the East Asian Community Institute, which is chaired by the former Prime Minister. This is where I was just blown away. This is the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Hatoyama's apology was reminiscent of then West German Chancellor Willy Brandt's knee fall at the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising Memorial in 1970. Mr. Hatoyama later said during a news conference that he was there as a former prime minister of Japan, as well as a Japanese national and a human being. So this article from CNN, which came out 4 months later, said the comfort women were not satisfied with Abe's apology because it wasn't as, quote, heartfelt as Willy Brandt's. But 4 months earlier, the previous prime minister, uh, Hatoyama, had did that exact same thing. And the Wall Street Journal even referenced Willy Brandt's knee fall apology.
It's, I think it's. Aren't there photos of this? Like, how can it be denied that this happened? But one thing that I will say, you mentioned fake news earlier, and it's another thing. Probably going to get soundbited there, but CNN and stuff, right? I mean, what I will say, and I've noticed this from NPR, and I enjoy listening to NPR, and but I've noticed that the way that they report news is they'll say one thing, right, and then they'll say, but descendants say, or like, but opponents say this. And it's like the way they word that. So like the article you just read, you said some people didn't feel like it was adequate. They could have heard that from like one person or two people, and then they go and write the article. Oh, well, opponents say this. So it makes it sound like there's a shitload of people like thinking this, when in reality, it's probably just a manufactured conflict. If that makes sense. And so I wonder how many people actually really believe that.
And the person CNN quoted, and this, as much as I hate CNN, this is not CNN's fault. They're quoting someone who said that they have spoken to comfort woman survivors. Who is this person that has said they've spoken? I could say, I've spoken to this, I've spoken to that.
Yeah. If again, we have sources confident, or go ahead.
So, and as someone living in Korea first told about this, Japan didn't apologize. Okay, well, that's messed up. And then I find out that, Japan gave a lot of money in the 60s, and then they gave money again in 2015, and then they apologized. Okay, well, that's better, but they said that he didn't do a sincere apology. And then I found out that he did do, not Abe, but Hatoyama did do a sincere apology. So then this narrative is kind of falling apart. And we're almost fully caught up to speed.
We have a picture too later. Maybe we should. Maybe you guys can find that photo on at Benny and Neil Twitter, at Benny and Neil. We may post that photo.
We've been our account got banned, or
we literally made the account last week, and we have already been silenced. We didn't even post.
Imagine if we posted.
This is this Twitter, ladies and gentlemen.
So all these Russian bots somehow making all this new news and sound about Trump. We can't even make an account without getting immediately banned. Gotta figure that out. But yeah, we'll post that photo if we can. So near the end of 2016, Park Geun-hye was in the process of getting impeached. That's a whole nother topic, which isn't really important, but she ended up getting impeached for things unrelated to what we're talking about today. President Moon Jae-in, now President Moon Jae-in, at the time electee, won the new election. Yeah, and he became president, and his main goal was, he used to be a human rights activist lawyer, so his main thing was making sure people got paid. Like, he pretty much wanted to jack up the minimum wage, nearly double. When he came into office, the minimum wage was about 6,000 something won per hour, which is about maybe around $6 or a little under $6. And now next year it's going to be 10, which is, it's nearly a 100% increase, really massive. The economy has been tanking ever since, as also a result of other failed economic policies, and his plan with North Korea is kind of falling apart. Everything was good up until the Vietnam talk with Trump and Kim Jong-un. Since then, it kind of fell apart. Now North Korea is launching stuff again.
Oh yeah, they're launching it.
War rhetoric. Um, so I think this is all his government. Oh, this is his strategy to shift the focus away from the economy and the failed North Korea negotiations and have a common public enemy to unite the country.
Which we've seen time and time again. And that's one of the most frustrating things for me. It's like, if you look, there's nothing new under the sun, right? All of this tactics being used. I mean, I'm talking about tactics back home being used by Trump, tactics in Brazil being used by, or what is that, Venezuela? Maduro, Brazil. Who is it? What's that guy's name in Brazil? The new president. Let me see. Hold on. Maduro, fucking, Bolsonaro.
I,
Yeah, Bolsonaro. Just like the rhetoric, these things to ramp up the fucking population, get
terrorists,
everyone.
the U.S., the
Yeah, like
terrorists.
terrorists. Oh yeah, it's terrorists. The never-ending boogeyman of the terrorists. It's all a ploy. Which, by the way, just as a plug, after Trump's longtime friend Jeffrey Epstein and the child rape allegations, which Trump was connected with, he came out with some tweets that were seen as racist by the media, and we never heard about the child rape anymore. What happened with the child rape? And this is what these people, these politicians, do these things to shift the public view, and we fall for it every time. And this is probably what Moon is doing.
So late last year, like at the end of October, this is now we're quoting Al Jazeera. These are all international news companies, nothing in Korea or Japan to try to be as fair as possible. Al Jazeera on October 29, 2018 wrote South Korean court orders Japanese firm to compensate World War II slaves. South Korea's top court ruled on Tuesday that a company from Japan must compensate for South Koreans for their forced labor during World War II. Don't quote me, but I believe that is Mitsubishi.
Probably Mitsubishi
Well, I don't know.
Zaibatsu.
It says right here. I know Mitsubishi is under attack, but also the Nippon Steel and Sumitomo Metal Corp.
Yeah,
And this just really did it for Abe. I didn't hear about any. No, honestly, no one was even talking about Japan until about a month and a half ago, maximum 2 months ago. All of a sudden, we started hearing about before it was the Comfort Woman, now it's the Comfort Woman and the slaves, and I think enough was enough for Abe, and he was mad and he pushed back. So pretty much what he did was he made it difficult for, I guess, Japan exports a certain material, which is
yeah,
a
I can pick
key
this up here.
ingredient. Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, just picking this up here. So I read an article about this. So basically, Korea needs this key component in producing electronics.
Oh,
Um,
semiconductors, which is one of Korea's biggest exports.
yeah, it's producing semiconductors, which is an electronic, right? So electronics, and Japan has this and sells this to Korea, and I think it's a very large percentage. I don't know, I don't remember. I don't know if it's like 90% or something insane. It's a large percent, and what happened was Japan started to clamp down on exports to Korea with the reason, right? This is the reason, the ostensible reason that Japan gave was because Japan has concerns that these valuable raw materials would be funneled to the north, and because Moon is a good friend supposedly of I guess they believe of Un, so that's the face reason. We don't know if that's true. I don't. I have no idea. Is Moon? Do you think Moon is a good friend of Un? I mean, is that true? I mean,
Well, I mean, their names do rhyme, so if that's any
and he wants to
indication.
unify. He wants to unify, does he not?
Yeah, I mean, to put things in, well, just to add something, apparently, allegedly, these materials have also been found in the Middle East, according
Hmm.
to Japan. And apparently, Japan has been wanting to talk about this with Korea for a long time, and Korea just denied it or didn't want to talk. That I don't know too much about. That's an
That could be
allegation.
that could be related. So I don't think it's just the North, right? I think they're just afraid that South Korea, for some reason, does not have a handle on these materials, and this is again allegedly the reason. Who knows? I don't know if that's true, but that's why Japan has stopped. And so basically, what's happened over the last month or so is that Korea has become increasingly agitated by this. And so the first thing they did, I believe, they went to maybe the World Trade Organization, and they were like whining to America and the other countries about how Japan's being unfair and they're not trading with us and blah blah blah. And basically that's what they did. They went and told on Japan. And then I think a couple weeks later, it just kept ramping up, and now Korea has been moved off of a sort of official list. They've been
Whitelist.
Yeah, they've been removed from the white list. So now it's going to be even harder to conduct trade.
What is the whitelist?
The whitelist is basically a list of countries that are greenlit to buy and import certain items from Japan, buy certain items from Japan. I think the process may be a little easier for them to get these things. So maybe that's what Japan claims. In the article that I read, which to be fair was a Japanese article, stated that this was before the whitelist thing, by the way. This is like a week or two before the whitelist removal. It stated that all Japan was doing was taking Korea off of a preferential system, where so now they would have to go through the same channels as any other country would if they want to purchase these items. So that was the first step. Then they kept fighting, and then now they're off the whitelist. So I guess that's the big fuck you from Japan. And again, who knows? Japan could be lying, but
this is now an explicit rated podcast episode. You dropped an F-bomb.
I apologize.
The floodgates are open.
We're going to be silenced.
Hashtag Benny Neil.
Benny Neil.
Don't silence us. Can't silence us.
Can't be silenced. All right.
Don't be silenced. Yeah. So apparently it is a lot much more. It's not impossible. Some people here were quoting that they won't export these items. That's not true. They're still exporting them. Apparently each individual shipment has to be, verified or checked before it gets sent out. I know China has a similar process when they export items. Then there is corruption. You could pay the government extra to get expedited or to get on a special list or something. But Korea was the only country in Asia that was on this white list, and now they're not on it anymore. So in retaliation, Korea's pissed. So now Koreans are boycotting Japanese products. There's no Japan boycott. It's everywhere.
Have you seen this?
It was just on the news. Oh yeah, you go to the convenience store. There's a website showing you which items are Japanese and which Korean items you can buy in their stead. There's stickers everywhere. I went to the store the other day to buy a Pocari Sweat, particularly because it was Japanese.
And we should say, guys, that I have tried to get Benny to move over to Japan for years, and he actually prefers Korea, right? So hearing this from him is actually pretty. It's a pretty big thing. I mean, this is a country that he does not prefer, but even still, I mean, it just seems to us, I think, looking at the totality of the circumstances, that I just think Korea is being a little bit unreasonable, and maybe we can draw parallels later to different world areas that have similar issues of people bringing up old shit. Which, yeah, it's good to bring it up and discuss it if it's for a constructive and meaningful purpose. But I don't think it's good to just keep rehashing the same thing over and over. I mean, look at the Middle East. These people have been fighting for literally thousands of years, and it's like we need to stop. It's old shit.
This you want to hear my point? This is my point. Let me
break it down.
Let me break it down. Without before researching for this episode and finding out all this information about what Japan has done,
Which has been some very fucked up shit, by the way. Just to be fair, Unit 731, fucking
horrible,
horrible. I mean, they fucking
worse than Nazis.
yeah. To be honest, and I should stay. I should have a more clean mouth. I apologize, but no, they did. And let's just tell some of the horrors of what they did. I mean, we're talking about infecting people with the bubonic plague, performing surgery on pregnant women while they were conscious, just horrific things, allowing people to be bitten by rats that were infected with syphilis. It's just insane.
Well, they gave this is something I saw, and if you're queasy, I don't know, put it on mute, turn the volume down for a moment. We'll tell you when we're done. They would inject syphilis into someone, and then force them to have sex with another prisoner. And then and syphilis would be transmitted, and they would pretty much monitor these people as syphilis was taking over their bodies. And what is the third stage? It like literally like eats your brain or makes you become brain dead or something.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it eats your brain and then you just die. I mean, it's crazy. And then I mean, I saw one where, and again, this is before global warming ramped up insanely. But I mean, there were cold areas of China where they would. Have you heard about this? Where they would have someone outside, they would wet their arm or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think I did.
Did you hear about this? Yeah, they would allow it to freeze, and then they would like break it or something. It was
They
just
would try to hit it with like a shovel or
oh my
something.
god, and we they I mean through this horrific Unit 731, I heard that tons of really valuable medical information was found out, which is true. But I mean, I think in this case, the ends don't justify the means for me. I mean, it's fucking horrific, some of the things that they did. So again, this is just to say that we're not absolving Japan, and I just want to make that clear for our listeners, uh, the few listeners out there that may be hearing this. Anyway, continuing on.
You mean us when we
Yeah.
listen to the podcast? Hello, future us.
Yes.
So before doing all this research, I still didn't think that it was a good strategy for Korea to pursue this. Over the past few years, I used to live in Korea back in 2011, 2012. I left. I came back in 2016. Back then, 2011, 2012, the air here was perfect. No problems. Maybe a little bit of smog here and there, nothing too bad. 2016, it starts becoming a problem. 2017, 2018, it's getting worse. Now it's in nearly every season, even summer, if there's no typhoon, it's not raining, we have air pollution. Why?
Yeah.
China.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
This weird. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have enough time to cover. We'll just keep going. We'll keep going. A long format.
So China has been, as people know, their air pollution is horrible in Beijing, Shanghai, all these major cities. So Xi Jinping, in an effort to crack down on the air pollution, they started building trash burning facilities along the coastline of China, directly in the path of Korea.
What sea is that? It's not the Yellow Sea.
I don't know if you guys have burned trash before. I have. Have you ever burnt plastic and that horrible toxic smell that comes out of it? If you burn styrofoam, it's like purple smoke. Like you don't breathe that. You definitely, it's horrible. Now, there's actually two ways to burn trash. There's the economically friendly way. I don't know how the science behind that, but apparently it exists. And then there's that throw it in the incinerator and we don't give a fuck way. Of course, the economically friendly way is more expensive. So China doesn't want to do that. So they built these trash facilities and are burning trash, and all of that smoke is coming
And that
to
is
the
the
Korean
Yellow Sea,
Peninsula.
just for our
And
listeners. Yes, crossing the Yellow Sea, uh, straight
in my opinion, it's an act of war. They are
toxic
they
fucking attack.
This is chemical warfare. They are just think of the young and beautiful Korean children. For once, won't someone think of the children?
Yeah, didn't you? You showed me. I mean, the app, the air quality app in Korea once. I mean, it was just terrible, wasn't it? Like, it was past yellow and red, and it was like purple. It was like in the.
Well, they have like different rankings. Now orange is still considered okay. Orange is unhealthy for sensitive. We'll break it down. Blue is fine. Green is good. Yellow is yeah. Orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups. Sensitive groups being people with breathing conditions, lung conditions, elderly people, and children. Red is bad for everyone, and then there's black, which is like you guys you guys don't go outside. My app says like never go outside. Like don't go outside.
It had like a picture of a skull or something on it, didn't it? It was crazy.
It's really bad. And
There are many people don't know this, but lung diseases are actually one of the leading causes of death worldwide. Like India, I've heard in like some parts of India, it's horrible, horrible, and you can't. I mean, people are dying because of this. It's nuts. Um, yeah,
so the amount of people getting lung related diseases is going to go up. Children have asthma now, on the rates of asthma are going up. My life's being affected.
it's 4 million people a year. I just checked.
And
I just checked. 4 million
in
people a year.
from my perspective, let's assume that Japan never apologized and they refused to acknowledge it. We're talking about something that happened 70 something horrible that happened 70 years ago on one hand, and on the other hand, we're talking about something that's affecting us right now. I would at the very least put my differences aside for the time being in order to tackle this problem. South Korea is a very tiny country. We can't do anything by ourselves. We need as much help as possible. And Japan being one of the closest allies in the region, is it really worth putting the relationship in jeopardy over something that happened 70 years ago?
Almost a century ago. I mean, it's. I think looking at that question, uh, I think the fact that China. I mean, we're not even just talking about the how would you say this? I'm sorry, I'm very tired. The environmental issues that are coming by way of China. I mean, different things like China's other ambitions in the region. I mean, these people in China, they are these people. That's going to be a soundbite. But in China, I mean, they've been building up. They've been building up military, making islands, literally making islands all across like the South China Sea, and expanding their influence. Look what they're doing in China. I'm in Hong Kong. I hear in Taiwan they're also trying to exert influence in some ways. And I mean, with Hong Kong, it's kind of a special case because that was always China technically. But just what's going on with China as a whole, I think South Korea really picked a horrible time to be in a conflict with Japan. I think they should be getting closer um, uh, than ever right now.
And on top of well, let me say this before I did the research and found out all of what Japan has did. I had this opinion. I justified it with the China problem, the air becoming horrible, and also the U.S. really, they kicked Japan's ass as well during the war. The only country in the world to have an atomic bomb dropped on them was Japan, and they had two dropped on them. The fire bombings of Tokyo, which killed more people than the atomic bombs themselves. The entire country was annihilated. So, as far as a vengeance point of view, you can argue they've already been avenged.
I mean, Japan. It's weird too. There's not a lot of, you would think, right? So funny that we're talking about uh, simmering anger, right? You would think that people in Japan absolutely hate America for what they did, right? But it's crazy. I don't. People know that I'm from America. I have never once in my entire time, and this is true, I've never once heard a Japanese person talk shit or disparage America for what happened in the war, for the nuclear bombs, for the fucking the firebombing, for none of that. And the thing is, after the war, right, they became close with America. America paid them a buttload of money. Their economy started booming, and look where they are today. Even after the 90s crash in Japan, where Japan has been stagnant for over 20 years, they still are doing fairly well. We're number three, number four in the world economy, and I mean, they let it go. I mean, I'm sure they think about it, but they let it go, and I think they progressed, and I think that's what's possible. If Korea, what would be possible if we just were friends?
Yeah, Korea experienced amazing economic growth too. They became the only country to be so poor that they had to receive funds from other countries, and then became rich enough to support poor countries with that same type of fund. So, I mean, before reading all this, I had justified that because of the air pollution issue. And as a side note, some people may be thinking, "Oh, well, I saw the NASA study in 2016, and Korea is responsible 50%." I was a part of that camp momentarily. And I realized, well, one, although that might be true, the trash burning facilities are making things worse, and I didn't know about that at the time. And two, if the air pollution was half as bad as it is now, it would be fine. It wouldn't be that big of an issue. The fact is, it's twice as worse now because of China. And that was before all this research. Now that I found out all of what Japan has done and apologized and paid, I think, and as you meant, I love Korea. It's my new home. F Japan. Japan is really weird. There's weird stuff going on over there. I think Korea is being unreasonable.
Yeah, I think that's how we should be in these. We've lost that kind of in the political discourse in certain places, but I think it's important to be able to call your own quote side or whatever, if you want to call it that. To call your own side out when you are being unreasonable, and I would agree. I think with everything we've seen, um, I think Korea should probably just put it behind us and start working together. And if you have dissenting opinions, though, you know where you can drop those at Benny and Neil, twitter.com at Benny and Neil. We'll be waiting for those replies.
As soon as we get on ban for whatever reason,
Yes.
waiting
Yes.
for
Yes.
that unbanning. So, you know, people will say, "Oh, well, who are you? Who are you, Benny? You're just some white guy. You don't understand the issue." And I'm white, yes, and I'm German, and I'm Jewish. So I think I understand the most. I have dealing, and we could reveal to listeners that you're black, right?
Yes. Yeah, let me say right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I'm black. Yeah, I mean, it's been, I think, even though we are Western, living here in Asia, I think it is possible for us to have, objective, valuable opinions. I think most people here, um, most foreigners here just live and keep their head down, and we do too, to a certain extent. But I think it's important that sometimes we bring these issues to listeners in America or in the West who may be interested, or maybe even expats living here who are interested in, hearing our perspective. But yeah,
Or anyone in Korea, Japan that has an English ability high enough to understand
basically, yeah. And so, I
what we're
mean,
talking about.
when we're talking about this, I mean, there are some other things that come to mind. Like, for example, although I'm black, I actually disagree with the idea of reparations that is being floated. I mean, it's been floated for decades, but I don't think, I mean, just as a practically, I don't see how, reparations can be given out. I don't think um, that's the right way to go about it. I think we could end up in a situation with like the same way that Korea is in right now, which is, or the same, like once you apologize once you pay money once, it becomes a kind of a never ending thing, right? Because then the next generation of people can say, oh, well, I didn't get mine. Like, I didn't get my reparations. So when does it end? Which is one of the reasons why America, as a rule, doesn't pay ransom to terrorists, which is something that I hear Japan does. I don't think they admit it, but I hear that Japan actually does pay sometimes, and it's not good, right? That's why they've had to do it. I heard multiple times, and again, this may not be true, but that's just what I've heard. Um, so I'm really not for. I think we should talk about it. It should be brought up. Maybe a country should apologize, but then it should be over. Like it should be done, and we should work. I mean, America is kind of a tough case though too. So not to again minimize what's going on in America because there's a lot of other systemic things that you could argue that are in place. I mean, from the origin of the country, so it's a little bit different. But my basic point is that I think that working together to move past something is very important. And I think in some ways, going the route that Korea is going, or even the reparations route, I don't think that really moves us forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that slavery happened. It's definitely fucked up. I'm sorry to hear that it happened, but I don't, as someone that wasn't in participated in it, I don't think that we should have to pay or that we should personally apologize for something that we didn't even do. I mean, I love black people. I love Asian people. I don't have that many white friends, as a matter of fact. So I don't see why I have to be blamed or white people have to be blamed as a whole for something that was done a long time ago.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, this the way this ties into Asia is I'm sure there are many Japanese people who feel the same way. It's like, well, I wasn't the one, raping Korean women. I wasn't the one out there slaughtering pregnant women or infecting people with syphilis or stuff like that. So it just never ends. And so that's why I think it has to start with a conversation. I think that's why we do this podcast. We decided to do it. We didn't do this to become famous. We just did it to kind of talk and get some ideas out there because I think that's where progress begins. It's a good way to kind of wrap this up. What do you think? Do you have any last ideas? I mean, about this issue? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Predictions?
Well, what happened is that I don't know how far it's going to go. I think Korea is starting to scale back a little bit. The other day, there were people like I guess government workers posting like banners across the city about the No No Japan protest, and the petition went up almost immediately to take those down. It's getting a
Mm,
little bit too far. I've seen stuff online, videos of like local Korean people that it's kind of it's in Asia, and I'm sure Japan is the same. It's kind of like it's not based on individualism. It's based on collectivism. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that they're not supporting the movement because they have a good reason to. They're just doing it because I mean to them the reason is everyone's doing it. I'm obligated to do it as well. It's kind of like
I
the
got to be a good Korean.
you're with us or against us argument that George Bush gave after 9/11. You're like, well, wait a minute, what role did Afghanistan had? Weren't the hijackers, the alleged hijackers from Saudi Arabia? And nope, you're either with us or against us.
Yeah,
So, just
yeah.
a few weeks ago, China and Russia are trying to make the situation worse. Russia flew a plane over. They were doing some joint exercise with China. They flew a plane over the islands we mentioned earlier, the Liancourt Rocks or the Dokdo Island, or what is the Japanese
Isn't it
Takash?
Takafumi?
That's is it
Takashima.
Takashima? Yeah.
Yeah.
They flew over, and of course, Korea fired warning shots, and then it got on the news, and then Korea said, "Don't fly planes over Dokdo," and Japan said, "What are you talking about? That's Takashima." So we
Yeah,
can't.
it's just
We're getting played.
when you think about it, it just look at what we're talking about. Like we're talking about flying over rocks. We're talking about some shit that happened 100 years ago. But what we're not talking about, and this is what is very key, what what is the motivation, right? What's the motive? What are we being diverted from? We're being diverted from China's actions in their expansion, military ambitions, what they're doing with the environment. We're being distracted by, I mean, why is China doing joint exercises with Russia? Right. And you look at this and you look at the divisions in the West. I mean, we're seeing this play out, guys. I mean, people always, oh, how did we see that? We didn't see it coming. I mean, this shit is happening before our eyes, like China, Japan and South Korea, relations falling apart, just as China starts butt butting it up with Russia. Uh, Britain's falling apart. I mean, they're trying to leave Europe. America is a clusterfuck. Brazil. I mean, it's what is going on here? What it's crazy.
I think something I didn't note, and it's not a big deal, but the current administration in Korea, they went to university in the 80s when there was a very big pushback against the dictatorships that happened in Korea. So the college students in the 80s are very anti-US, anti-Japan, and they're the ones in power now. So I think that's where a large part of the sentiment's coming from. I think it's Moon trying to hide his failed economic policies. I think it's Moon trying to hide his failed North Korea peace talks. And the only thing I know is every day I'm breathing in poisonous air that's coming from burnt trash from China. And we care more about boycotting Pocari Sweat, and we're not sponsored by Pocari Sweat, by the way.
I wish we had a sponsor.
Yeah,
That'd be fucking
please
sick.
sponsor us, Pocari Sweat. I'll drink your drink every
We
day.
got,
We need the sponsors.
no, we don't need the sponsor. No, we need to get a. You see these YouTube guys, they're always like, some of them are unapologetic too. They're like, I just donate, like, donate to my fucking Patreon, blah, blah, blah. We don't have a Patreon. That is how dedicated we are to bringing you unfiltered, unbiased, opinionated news from the East, objective news from the East, from
Benny
a
and Neil.
Western perspective. You can only get that at Benny and Neil. Hashtag Benny and Neil, Twitter. Find us there.
Patreon silences people. They're not for free speech. They kick people off their platform based on what videos are made on YouTube. That's a whole nother can of worms that Jordan Peterson or people of his, or Sam Harris even, would talk about better than we can. My
We are
point is,
going to
final
be.
point. Let me just tell you, final point. Japan's apologized before. Japan's given a lot of money before. What Japan did was really bad. China is poisoning the air. We need all the friends we can get right now.
Yes,
I'm done.
let me just get this last point out. So, lastly, right, we want to. This is not we are not left or right to be, because we said Sam Harris was quoted, Jordan Peterson was. I can envision this show being labeled alt right or some kind of ridiculous label. We're not left right.
Racist,
Yeah.
sexist,
Oh yeah, right.
Trump
Any of
supporter.
the ists. What we are is, this is not left or right. We are, as our good friend Andrew Yang, presidential candidate who happens to be Asian. We're forward thinking, and that's what we aim to be. You can find that at, you know where to find us. And that's about it. We'll see him next week.
We want to know what you guys have to say
We
about
want to know
this
what you guys have to say. You know where to find us. Hashtag Benny and Neil.
at Benny and Neil once we get unbanned. Hopefully that's by the time you hear this. If not, we'll be trying to blow up Jack Dorsey's Twitter.
No, don't say that. We're gonna have to edit that out.
No, I said
Okay.
his Twitter page. Blow up the
We're
Twitter
gonna
page
we're gonna
with
edit.
posts, not anything.
Oh my god.
The CIA is connected. They're listening to the FBI. All right, that's all we have for this week.
Yeah, have a good
Benny,
evening.
we don't have a exit line.
Not yet. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.